What's going on, everybody? I'm Jiffy Nano, and today I have a bit of a different video for you. Today we're going to go over 5 games I think you should try if you like the Borderlands games. First off, I made a point to ignore the obvious ones like Warframe, Destiny, The Division, and Outriders. These, in my opinion, are the most prominent looter shooters on the market today, and odds are if you like Borderlands, you probably tried most, if not all, of these games. If you haven't, you should give them a shot. Destiny and Warframe are free to play, The Division goes on sale fairly often, and Outriders recently got a pretty decent expansion. I made a point to find older games or indies that aren't in the spotlight right now and that at least have similarities to the Borderlands series or the looter shooter genre. So here, in no particular order, are 5 games you should try if you like Borderlands. First off, we have Gunfire Reborn. This is a first-person shooter roguelike with RPG elements, and while not a looter shooter, this game does have unique abilities and talent trees for each of its 6 characters and an overarching talent tree for your entire profile. There's a lot of different guns, scrolls that give you special abilities or stat boosts, and skill point pickups you can put in your ascension tree, which functions as your skill tree for each run. Your progress will be reset if you beat a run or die, but you still earn overall progress through upgrades to your character and profile talent trees, making you more powerful and subsequent runs easier, giving you a sense of progress throughout the whole time you play. The gunplay is solid, and it has a very similar elemental damage system to Borderlands, with fire dealing more damage to HP, toxic to armor, and electric against shields. All the weapons and elements blend really well with the abilities and passives, and it gets even deeper with the Inscription and Gemini system. I've really enjoyed this one, and I've put well over 100 hours into this both solo and co-op, and it's available on all platforms including mobile recently, so that's pretty cool. Next, we have Remnant from the Ashes. This game was a hidden gem for me a few years ago and continues to have one of the best endgame secondary modes ever included in a game like this. Now, Remnant is not quite a looter shooter and more of a third-person shooter action RPG. Kind of falls under the Souls-like category, but before you let that drive you away, it's not nearly as unforgiving as traditional Souls-like, with most of the combat being ranged. That being said, that does have a lot of similar systems to what you would see in other Souls-like games, with limited stamina, dodge rolls with invincibility frames, and big boss fights with large attacks that you have to dodge through. There is a wide variety of firearms, armor, trinkets, and mods for weapons that give you different abilities like extra fire damage on your bullets, firing radioactive orbs, or creating a healing circle you can stand in. There's also quite a few melee weapons, and I'm sure you can make a full melee build if you wanted to, but the ranged combat in this is much more fleshed out in my opinion. Unlike other Souls-likes, there's a trait system that increases different stats and gives you bonuses as you level up. You'll find these traits throughout the world, and you can invest points as you level to increase your reload speed, critical damage, or even XP earned. But the coolest part of this game in my opinion is actually the world progression. All the areas in this game are randomly generated from a tile system, so no 2 playthroughs are the same. You could go through the first area and get an assault rifle, but someone else could have a completely different starter area. This gives the main story a lot of replayability because you can get completely different bosses, loot, and endings on subsequent playthroughs. My favorite part of this game by far, though, is the survival mode. Survival mode is almost literally a roguelike mode for Remnant. You start off in a hub area where you can buy some armor or weapons, then you have to fight through 2 random areas from the campaign, collecting random trait drops and gear along the way. In the 3rd room is a boss, and once you kill that boss, you get sent back to the hub to do it all over again. As time passes, enemies get harder, very similar to the Risk of Rain system, and if you die, you lose everything you got on that run and start over. Dying in survival doesn't affect your normal character in the campaign, but there are some items and trait exclusively found in survival mode that once you find them, you can use in the campaign. Remnant is on all platforms except for Switch, but you do need the Swamps of Corsus DLC for survival mode. This game does go on sale fairly often and is one of my favorite hidden gems that I've ever played, so grab this when you can. Next is Shadow Warrior 2. This is an older game, came out back in 2016, but man is this fun. This is a ridiculous FPS story game that can be played in single player or co-op, and the best way for me to describe this game is Doom mixed with Duke Nukem mixed with Borderlands. Gameplay wise, it's pretty close to the newer Doom games, double jump, dashes, huge weapon wheel, and super fast combat. But the writing is very Duke Nukem. Crude jokes, ridiculous one-liners, and dialogue. The main protagonist is always making snarky remarks and making fun of other characters or giving the finger to enemies. And as far as the Borderlands comparison, there are a bunch of abilities you unlock and upgrade, but you can also collect random weapons and upgrades of different rarities as you play. This obviously gives you a lot of options for weapons you can use, and the upgrades can completely change how weapons function. For example, I had a revolver that started off as a slow precision-based gun, but I put a mod on that changed it to a fast-shooting fanfire revolver that I couldn't precisely aim anymore. There's a lot of variety here, and it's a fun romp with friends. It's available on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. It probably works with backwards compatibility, but I'm not sure. And I think I got this for like $6, so it's a really good value if you haven't played it yet. Next is Warhammer Vermintide 2 and eventually Warhammer 40k Darktide. Vermintide is a first-person 4-player co-op horde shooter like Left 4 Dead, although calling it a shooter isn't really correct, because the main thing you'll be doing in Vermintide is melee. There is some shooting and guns, but it's usually safe for bursting down priority targets. The gameplay in this is pretty simple but fun. Go into a map, finish the objective as you hack away at hordes of rat creatures and zombie things. There are 5 different characters you can choose from, each with 3 or 4 different careers that change the active and passive abilities, hit points, and main weapons you can use. After each mission, you get a loot box that gives you random weapons, trinkets, charms, and necklaces. This combined with the crafting system lets you piece together a build to take on the higher difficulties. Like I said, this game is simple, but man is it a fun time with a group, and it only makes me more excited for Warhammer 40k Darktide, which is pretty much the same game but in the sci-fi 40k universe rather than the Warhammer Fantasy universe, which essentially means less melee and way more shooting. Darktide is still a while off yet, but Vermintide 2 is available on all platforms except for Switch, and it's definitely worth a pickup to play with a few friends. The last game I wanted to talk about is an indie game that's only available on Steam right now called Nightmare Reaper. This is an old school Doom-inspired shooter with some RPG and loot mechanics built in. You play through a mix of randomly generated and handmade levels, collecting different loot, looking for secrets, and finding gold for your skill tree, which actually has you play a little mini-game to unlock each upgrade. With 80 weapons to find and over 30 enchantments for each of them, there's an insane amount of loot variety and a fast, fun mix of old school and modern gameplay, high enemy density, and an absolute killer soundtrack. I really enjoyed the brilliant chaos of this game, and I really hope it comes out to consoles soon. So I hope you all end up trying and enjoying these games. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, liking, hitting the bell, and checking out my live stream over on Twitch. If you want to support me and my content, consider becoming a member or checking out my Patreon, links in the description. And if you want to see the ramblings of my ADHD-fueled brain, check out my Twitter and TikTok. Until next time, have a good one.